Kevin, what's your assessment of the way Chelsea played?
They were fine. Listen, didn't set the world alight.
Just fine?
Fine, yeah, no, he'd be happy, of course. He made a big decision beforehand, as we want to get into, about Lukaku. Didn't bring him on. 2 strikers scored. Things went his way. Lille are no mugs. They never looked like scoring. Listen, Lille were fine. They got into good positions, got players forward, got people in the box, but they didn't look like they scored if they were there for another week. Didn't create any chances, and Chelsea were very professional. There'd be a couple of injuries, and they had to probably put more physically into it, and they've had a tough run in the last few weeks. You see people getting cramped, people coming off injured. I think that's 6 wins in a row for them, for a team who aren't meant to be playing that well. In a final next weekend, Club World Champions, looks like they're going to the next stage of the Champions League. So everything is starting to turn for them after a tough couple of months. They're not in a bad position at all. I think you'd be delighted. You see the frustration when they scored the first goal after a few minutes. You see him on the touchline, Tuchel's celebration. So it was that showed a man who was a little bit frustrated, had a little bit of stick, probably after getting a lot of interviews in the last week or two, dealing with the Lukaku thing, and see striker score, and he was getting that out on the touchline. Yeah,
because we heard him, Lisa, beforehand, and he's saying, look, Lukaku was tired and that sort of thing. But some of his comments, even in the build-up to this match, were kind of unusual. It was like he didn't sort of wrap himself around Lukaku in terms of, love and support before the match. It was like, well, what can I do? Or we'll look after him. It just was a bit wishy-washy.
Yeah, I think he doesn't have that really warm personality, that kind of real, as you say, the type of manager that puts the arm around the shoulder. I think he's German, he's very clinical, he's very methodical, he is direct. I think sometimes things can get a little bit lost in translation because when it's not your first language, you speak very literally, and it's probably a little bit more difficult to flower things up and massage around the key points. But I think he is a straight guy. I think, and he makes no bones about that. I think it's his character. I think he's very true to that. I think he'll have been really, really disappointed with Lukaku, and I think he would have had great expectations for him. I think he probably, with the interview in Italy, he possibly, he let this side down. And managers and players don't like that type of stuff. And, he didn't put the arm around it. He did say we shouldn't kick him when he's down, but then he doesn't play him tonight. Number one, he doesn't start him. Yeah. Then he celebrates, as Kevin said, like they just won a trophy when the man he backed scored. I think it's just his personality. And I think he had some difficulties when he was at PSG in terms of the big personalities and it's just his style of management. I don't think he's it's just not his character. Sure. I think.
I'm just wondering, Kevin, now look, it's hard to put an answer on this, but do you reckon the powers that be at Chelsea will be wondering why their 100 million quid star player is not playing?
Of course, 100 million quid, their most expensive signing ever. And as much as I like Tuchel, and I think he's a very good manager, it could be his weak link as a manager. He should learn, how does he get the best out of a player who is a fantastic centre-forward, who he might need between now and the end of the season? It feels like he burnt his bridges tonight with him and said, that's it, you're not coming on. I brought Timo Werner on ahead of him. You would like to see, someone who gets 24 goals last season, the same the season before, top world centre-forward, most clubs would look to have him, how he could, even, listen, put your arm around in the interviews, not say, I don't know how I'm going to get the best out of him, say he's a top-class player, Players listen to interviews, they hear that sort of stuff. How do you get the best out of him? You can get rid of him at the end of the season when you don't like him, but make sure he's still on your side and wants to play for you between now and the end of the season, because they'll have some tough games up. We see players getting injured tonight, they will need him. And you want Lukaku to be on his side. You want that player going, you know what, I go out and do it for the manager. Or the opposite is going, you know what, he can do, he can stick it. I don't need to play for him. I've got enough money. I'm going to move wherever in the summer. I'm not going to bother getting out of first gear for this manager, which he didn't last weekend. So Tuchel, talking about how he dealt with at PSG, it seemed to be an issue for him, how to deal with sort of bigger players who need their ego massaged, who need to be told they're the best. Lukaku's a £100 million player, comes to Chelsea, wants to be the first one getting the ball, wants to be talked about in the tactics in the meetings, get the ball to Lukaku, who gets the goal, or whatever it might be. And it seems like he hasn't got that, and that's why he feels that frustration. But The manager is getting results.
Yeah.
But he's not
winning
just
trophies.
getting results. He is the FIFA Best Men's Coach. He's the UEFA Men's Coach of the Year, the German Manager of the Year, the Champions League winner, Super Cup winner, FA Cup finalist, League Cup finalist. They just won the FIFA Club World Cup. They're no Cup final this weekend, and he's done all that in the last year. So whatever we say about him and whether or not he can manage players, but he's doing something right.
It's all about him.
He's doing something right.
And if he loses a couple of games in the next month, Chelsea
It'll
probably
be on
sack
about
him
him as well. I know. Yeah, exactly. I know. I'd say the mantelpiece at home is fairly crowded with stuff on it from all the awards that he's won. Let's look at the goal that kind of sorted this thing tonight. The Pulisic goal. Beautiful finish. Great ball as well.
Yeah, really, really good goal, and Kante's role in it you can't underestimate. But again, it comes from Chelsea getting numbers around the ball like we said they would, winning it back. Kante gets on it, drives forward. You're looking here going, would he make the challenge? He didn't, plays it wide, lovely ball, and it's a great finish. But, you know, you talk about Xhaka. If you're the two centre-backs there, you're absolutely having a cut off him for not having a nibble when he could, because he just leaves Font and Botman totally exposed then. They're committed, they can't make the challenge then, and then the little ball down the side. But it's a good finish, and it was, you know, once that goes in, it pretty much puts the game in Chelsea's hands, and they can probably take the foot off the pedal a little.
Okay. It's funny when you look, and I know you can do anything you want with statistics and numbers. Lille had 15 scoring attempts. There were only 2 of them on target, though. Chelsea had 8 scoring attempts and 4 of them on target. We have a couple of other Chelsea chances here from the second half.
Yeah, I'd like to see some of those Lille 15 scoring attempts, because there was not one of them clear cut, whereas Chelsea's were fairly decent attempts. I thought Chelsea'd have more to start the second half. Like the first half, pretty bright. Alonso, decent strike. Good block. They didn't push on from there, Chelsea. This was their other one good chance in the second half. Havertz does very well, wins it. Watch Kante here again. This is just before the second goal. Steaming to get into the box. He should have pulled it back for him, but he's a player for Chelsea. He got injured in the last group game we did, and at the time we were covering the game, we said when he was coming off, he could be a blow for Chelsea. He's the one player, I would say, in the top 4 or 5 teams in the league. They have such good squads, it doesn't really matter who gets injured, but he's the one player of all those teams. He gets injured for Chelsea. He's the one player they can't replace. You know, there's no one like him. He's the best centre midfielder in the league in what he does, and that's the one worry for Chelsea. They're so reliant on him. But since he's come back in, he's fit, and they've got into a rhythm. As I said, 6 wins in a row now, and he again tonight, just so much energy, so calm, so cool, so collected, goes about his business, just top class. Seeing him trying to get into the box like that, people put him down as a defensive midfielder, just pass it sideways. Seeing his energy, fabulous to see, and someone so. He doesn't go around bossing midfield, he doesn't go around screaming and shouting. He just goes around and does his job. I love watching him play.
Yeah, and it's funny, I'm just thinking as well, Lisa, like, if you're to believe the speculation, Declan Rice could be going to Chelsea. So where does he fit with Kante? Can you play the two of them in the same team?
I mean, like that's the conundrum at a club like Chelsea, is the amount of depth. But that's what you need. You need depth in your squad if you're going to win trophies, to cover things like, you know, COVID cases, injuries, suspensions. You need to have that, but you also have to have players who can give you something different in different games when different teams ask different questions of you. So, you know, you look at Jorginho, you look at Kovacic, Kante, if Declan Rice is in there, but you know, each of them have different qualities and they give you different types of things. And it's the same across the front. Lukaku is a really different player to Havertz when Havertz plays in the centre-forward role. Pulisic, the energy he gives in and around that area, the movement. So, you know, and then you look at someone like Jack Grealish, who's gone to Man City and struggled so badly to get into the team and find the rhythm. So it's different when you're a big fish in a smaller pond, but when you go into, you know, a team where you're not the big fish anymore and you really have to fight for your place, it becomes more then about the individual qualities that you have and what makes you different that you can add to the way that the manager wants the team to play.
Could cost them 150 million quid as well.
They don't seem to mind too much, throwing away a few pounds. I think he's actually, Kante is not getting any younger, he's getting older. You see when he gets injured in no replacement. I don't think he'd come in and play with him. There's enough games for Chelsea where he'd play enough games and eventually be Kante's successor.
All right. Let's look at Lille, because I want to talk to you about their goal-scoring abilities and whether they'll be able to turn this thing around in 3 weeks' time. But this team that's there, the championship winning team, the manager's already gone. This is going to break up over the course of the summer with a lot of the bigger players. Sanchez, we mentioned, will probably leave. Botman, we spoke about him beforehand. 50 million euro is the valuation. AC Milan, top of the list for this guy. What did you think? Like, is he worth 50 million quid?
Yeah, like, I mean, I talked him up at the start of the game, and, you know, from his defensive qualities, and something I've picked up on him is that I worry about him in possession, because nowadays the modern centre-back has to be able to step in with the ball. And the whole game, again, I saw it in the game against Metz, and I was wondering, was it just that game? But it was exactly the same again tonight, where when he gets the ball, he's always looking for the safe pass. He just wants to go out to the left back or back inside to Font, or maybe a little push pass into the middle of the pitch into Xhaka, and it comes back to him. But he never really goes and tries to attack it, and we'll see some clips here that, you know, from a defensive point of view, and again, he plays in a ball that puts his team in trouble. Now, from a defensive point of view, he recovers quite well and he gets them out of trouble, and that's, like we talked earlier, that's one of the key strengths of his game, again, using his body and his strength to shield the ball. But here, he's on the ball again. I mean, where's that ball going? That's never going to a Lille player. And he puts his team into trouble again. We talked about him from set pieces. He didn't get anything brilliant away tonight, and but again, a defensive clearance here. But the one area that I worry about him is in this, and this is an example of Rudiger. You watch Rudiger here; he gets on the ball, he head down, drives forward, and this is what the modern centre back has to be able to do. And look, you have Rudiger in the box then. And I know it's Chelsea are playing a back three, so the two centre-backs on either side, but you still need your centre-back to be able to start the play or to be able to play into the feet of your centre-forward. And that, for me, is the key area of Botman's game that I worry about him. And I think that's where he lacks the most quality. And I think as a modern-day centre-back, if you're going to be worth 50 million plus, you can't have that as a weakness in your game.
Is he a 40 million player now? The 10 mil off for the lack of ability to pass it forward?
Listen, I think it'll be fascinating. I think he definitely, I know he's contracted to 2025, and, you know, he's probably got a really bright future ahead with the Netherlands as well. But I think he'll get better, but I think he has a lot to work on in possession more than he does out of possession.
Can you see them scoring a couple of goals in Lille?
Listen, you go back to, they're at home, of course it should be different, it could be, but they have struggled to score goals recently. The two strikers haven't scored in, I think it's 6 or 7 games between the two of them. You know, you can see why tonight. I'm not totally blaming them. The ball isn't coming in quick enough into the box. They get forward to an area, I think Stephen Kelly was talking about in commentary, and then they go back and then they look up and they delay, and strikers can't make their move. They have a number of people in the box. It's not because they're not putting people in there, but they're just very slow at the delivery, very slow at their quality. Difficult for David, who's a great goal scoring record up until the last few months. Difficult, and you can see why he hasn't scored in recent weeks. Going home, it's not happening in football. I don't expect Chelsea to lose, but you don't put it past them. They're league champions in France for a reason. But it's more to do with their defensive qualities rather than their attacking prowess. From a Chelsea perspective then, I suppose, look, a lot of the heavy lifting and the workload up front was led by Havertz. What do you think of him? No, he was very good. He came in, he put in a massive effort, all three, in fairness to the front men. Havertz was excellent, took his goal well. It wasn't the finest, I suppose, header in the world. Came off the top of his head, and the run wasn't fantastic. It was more to do with Lille. Like, they have 6 players here, 4 in front of the front post, doing absolutely nothing. He doesn't have to do a run. He doesn't have to challenge anyone in the air. I used to love playing against teams who did zonal marking because, it's the easiest thing in the world. And when you come into a dressing room afterwards, and the manager goes, who's picking him up? Well, no one has any responsibility with zonal marking. You all just put your hands up in the air. It wasn't my fella. It's too easy, too simple, and especially when they're doing it as badly as they did with that many people in front of the front post. It just makes absolutely no sense. But listen, got in the run, got in the box, got his head on the ball, great delivery in as well. But very simple goal for Lille to give up so early in the game. He's fairly relaxed, isn't he? Looking ahead to the second leg, we've one more piece of analysis to look at, but Lisa, it's not actually clear if Chelsea's unvaccinated players can travel
to Lille for the second leg because of the rules that are in operation in France with unvaccinated players. There was a report today that there may be an exemption, but we understand that has been subsequently denied. So I think the figures in the Premier League are around 80% of players are vaccinated. We don't know how many players that would rule out from a Chelsea point of view, if indeed that does come to pass.
Yeah, and I think, look, that's going to be potentially a consideration for all sports people who have to travel going forward, and I think it's going to be something that's factored into the modern era, and it'll be something that will work itself out, I think, but in this situation things are changing all the time. They're very fluid at the moment, and again, we don't know how many players that affects.
Yeah.
But again, with a club like Chelsea, they've enough players. They have enough players, and they should be able to, based on what we saw tonight, I think whatever squad Chelsea travels with, I don't see them having too many problems over in Lille.
Yeah, OK, we'll see how that pans out.